The Gospel of Matthew in the 6th chapter reads as follows, beginning with the 13th verse. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And the King James Version ends this way. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. With all of our scientific advances, with all of our medical discoveries, one thing that humanity has not been able to do is to eradicate evil. And this text that we see here, with this doxology, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen, is a doxology that is answering the question, what do we do about evil? And in this postmodern age, we must learn how to engage evil, to deal with evil, by dealing with it from the perspective of for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. It is Professor Frank Thomas, a professor here in Chicago, who deals with this particular issue from a unique perspective. He raises a unique story by Elie Wiesel that shares the story of what happens to a young person who was in a concentration camp. This young man was in this concentration camp, and when he arrived there, he was about to give up. He saw an elder run toward the fence and was shot by Nazis. He then was thinking to himself that he was going to do the same thing. And an elder grabbed him by the shoulder and said, "Wait a minute, don't do that." And the young man said, "Well, why shouldn't I?" He said, "You need to see how this thing is going to end." And so the writer tells the story that there are three types of people that were able to make it out of a concentration camp. They have three different perspectives. The first perspective that they have is the one who is an optimist. They never made it out of the concentration camp. This is how the optimist looked at things. The optimist said, we're going to be delivered on Hanukkah. And Hanukkah would come and they would never be delivered. And so the optimist would then say again, well, we're going to be delivered in the Jewish New Year. Jewish New Year would come and they would never be delivered. And so the optimist would die of a broken heart. Then the other person that never made it out of the concentration camp was the cynic. The cynic would say, we're never going to be delivered. The cynic would give up before God actually showed up. They would make the statement, there is no God, nothing is going to happen, we're going to stay here in this concentration camp. And so the cynic would give up, refusing to engage evil. But there was one more individual in the concentration camp. And according to the story that Frank Thomas tells, it is the realist. The realist would share their faith in a different way. The realist would share this as they were in the barracks of the concentration camp. They would say, well, I don't know when we will be delivered, but I do know we serve a God who will deliver us. In the words of the African American tradition, he might not show up when you want him, but he's always right on time. And that's the kind of perspective that we must have, a realist perspective. In the words of Cornel West, we must have the courage to hope. We might not know when God is going to show up, but we do know that God will show up. And my father helped me to understand this. It became lucidly clear when I was a young man of how we deal with faith and how we engage evil. And you will not believe this, but we were watching a film. I rented a movie called The Guns of Navarone with Gregory Peck. Love The Guns of Navarone. I've seen it several times since then, but it was the first time that we watched the movie. My father had not seen it. I had not seen it. My mother had not seen it. And so we were sitting around watching the movie in the family room, and we were watching Gregory Peck do his thing, and we were coming toward the end of the film. And it looked like Gregory was going to die. And so I looked over at my mother, and she was nervous with the suspense of the film. She's pacing the floor. I'm nervous, biting my nails. I know Gregory's going to die. It's getting near the end of the film. And my father's just sitting there. He's cool. He's calm. He's collected. And I couldn't understand it. I said, now, Mom is upset. I'm upset. And Dad is all cool, calm, and collected. And so the film continues on. We're getting toward the end of the film. I know Gregory is going to die. And my mother just said, I can't take it anymore. She leaves the room. And I'm sitting there, I'm nervous, wondering, is Gregory going to get out of this situation? But my father is just sitting there, cool, he's calm, and he's all collected. And finally, I had to raise a question to him. I said, Pop, why is it that Mom left the room? Because she's not quite sure how this thing will end. And how is it that I'm so nervous because of the suspense of the film? And here you all, you're cool, you're calm, you're collected. My father looked at me and smiled and simply said this, said, son, I read the book. I know how this thing is going to end. And so the question comes to us, if we are to engage and deal with evil, the question is, have you read the book? Well, I know a book that says he'll never leave you nor forsake you. If God be for us, who can be against us? And if we keep those words in our spirit and in our heart, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. When we think about the evil of this world, when those Twin Towers fell in New York, 9/11, when we remember that even though there is evil in this world, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And there may be some who are raising the question, why would you entitle this message, Say Amen? Well, in the African American tradition, there is a call and response where the preacher speaks and the congregation says amen. But if we were to look in the Hebraic tradition, we know that amen means so be it. That God is going to do what God said God would do. And so when we say amen, we are saying in our spirits that God will do what God said God will do. So when we face the Osama bin Ladens of the world, say amen. When we are in the face of evil that has been created by men, say amen. When we are dealing with children who are hungry because we have created structures that abandon them, say amen. And when we're dealing with a continent that has been devastated by AIDS, say amen. We don't know when we will get out of the situation. We don't know when God will show up. But if we are able to say amen, we are saying that God will do what God said God will do. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.